I want to start with something a little different today. So I get a lot of messages from people asking me how I actually decide which crypto platforms are worth covering. And the honest answer is I just test everything myself, personally, with my own experience. I've been doing that for a few years now, and over time, it kind of became its own system. Find something that looks interesting, run it, see what comes out the other side. And lately, that system keeps pointing me toward mining platforms because I think the technology sitting underneath that whole category is genuinely at an interesting moment right now. So today, I'm just going to show you all of that in my account, my session, and my results. Then right before we wrap up, I want to talk about how I personally approach security because that context is honestly just as important as anything else I'm going to show you today. All right, let's start. So before I start clicking around, one thing worth knowing is that this platform runs the same way regardless of what device I'm on. Phone, tablet, desktop, no difference in experience, which I think matters more than it sounds because it means I can check in on a session from wherever I am. So right now I'm going ahead and hitting launch right here. And there's my dashboard. So this is the main screen. Everything I work with during a session is right here. Controls, data, all of it in one place. First thing on my end is selecting a token. And I actually want to pause on this for a second because the platform is built on multi-chain technology. So I'm sitting here with 14 different assets to choose from. That's a real range, and it gives me a lot of options depending on what I'm working with at any given time. Okay, moving over to the data center cluster power settings. So what I'm doing here is basically deciding the intensity of the session, how much computing capacity gets committed, how hard the system pushes, what the overall performance of the run is going to look like. And the reason I'm deliberate about this is that it has a direct effect on the fee at the end. So there's actually some thinking involved here rather than just picking something and moving on. All right, hitting start now, and okay, session is running. Console is live right in front of me, elapsed time, resource draw, my session progress, and a live log window that I keep an eye on throughout because it gives me a real-time read on how the system is actually behaving under the hood. So gonna let this run for a few minutes and then we'll get straight into what the withdrawal process actually looks like. Okay guys, I think that's a good run. Let me go ahead and call it here. Nice, pop-up is on screen, session is closed out, and right here it's showing me the exact token count from this run. That's the output. So here, the first thing I need is to add my receiving address. Same token I had selected at the start. Let me just take care of that now. All right, that's in. Next is the infrastructure fee. So that's the platform's charge for the session, and it gets calculated from the settings I had configured plus the total time the session was running. And this is something I want to highlight because I think it's actually a smart design choice. I've got full flexibility over which token I use to cover it. I can just go with whatever I've got that's most convenient right now. There's also a wallet connect option to handle the whole thing automatically if I'd rather go that route. But I'm going manual today though, just so the whole process is visible step by step. Good, everything is filled in, tapping I've sent right here, and now we're just waiting for the covering to clear. Won't be long. And while that's processing, okay, I want to get it to something before we close out, the safety side of things, because I genuinely think this is the most useful part of what I can share today. So before I get into the specifics, let me actually take a second to explain what cloud mining is, because I know not everyone here is coming from the same background. So the basic idea is this: instead of going out and buying physical mining hardware, setting it up, dealing with the electricity costs, all of that, you're essentially renting access to computing infrastructure that already exists somewhere in a data center. You configure a session, the system runs on their end, and the mined tokens come back to you. That's the whole model. No hardware, no maintenance, no technical setup required. You're just plugging into infrastructure that's already running and pointing the output. And that simplicity is actually part of why this space attracts a lot of bad actors, because it's easy to fake. So I'll just say it plainly. I've walked into scams before, and I'm bringing it up because I want to be real about the fact that it happens to people who know what they're doing too, not just beginners. Similar platforms are convincing on the surface, and they're not sitting somewhere hard to find. They go where the curious people are, and they're good at blending in. And what keeps making this a hard problem is that this industry just never stops moving. Something new is always getting attention, something else is always launching, and that constant churn creates this environment where taking a moment to slow down and be careful starts to feel like missing out. People behind bad projects understand that tension really well, and they lean into it. So a few concrete things that are part of my process now whenever I look at something new. First thing I check is just the platform itself, how it actually looks when I land on it. Scam projects almost always give themselves away in the design. Something about the page just doesn't sit right, like it was built to be glanced at rather than actually used. The proportions feel slightly off, the overall impression is hollow. There's this quality of something that was assembled to look like a real product rather than actually being one. Second thing I do is actually move through the product. Click around, try things, see how the interface responds when I actually use it. If it feels like nobody ever properly tested it before going live, awkward navigation, things that don't quite work the way they should, that's a clear signal. Okay, so to land this, I've been running this platform consistently for a few weeks now. Over 20 sessions logged, went through essentially the full token list, generally tried to stress test it from different angles to see where something might not add up. And every single time, everything came through clean. Right results, right timing, no friction anywhere. That kind of consistency across that many runs is what actually moves the needle for me in terms of trust. So if you want to dig into this yourself, link is in the description, also pinned in the comments. All right, that's everything for today. Really appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.